Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. So yes, I did get Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro recently, and I've been messing around with it. I'm liking it so far better than Dueling Network as a whole, although it's got some major issues. It's been crashing on me a lot. I haven't been able to get Dev Pro because I haven't made a Mac client for it yet, and I was one of those kids who thought Macs were the coolest things when I was in high school, and so I have it. I mean, it's not a bad decision. They're really durable computers, but that's a conversation for another time. The point is, I have Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. I've been messing around with it, and I'm going to show you guys what I've been playing around with. So I was watching some of the old videos I used to like all the time, and I saw a deck profile for L-Dub from Team Minority SPG, his Tomato Toolbox control deck, and I decided to see if I could apply that deck to the 2014 format. And this is what I got. I'm going to show you guys a deck profile, and then I'm going to do some replays of duels that I have had with this deck. So first we've got the Triple Mystic Tomatoes. When it's destroyed by battle, it can get basically anything out of your deck. Then you've got 2 Crusher, which is kind of the main card of this deck, second to Mystic Tomato. Gen X Ally Crusher, if you normal summon a Dark Monster while he's face up on the field, can destroy a card on the field. Pretty simple, and he combos with everything, including your double Spirit Reaper, which is protection from battle damage, and also, if you normal summon him with Crusher on the board, you can destroy a monster on the board, and then attack directly with the Spirit Reaper to pop a card out of your opponent's hand. It's really good. Then you've got your triple tour guide from the underworld and 1 Night Assailant. That allows you to do all your floatery things that you do with tour guide, and once again gets you major pluses off of Crusher. Then we've got 1 O Lantern. It's the Evil Swarm card that if you sack it can pop a face-up monster on the board. Once again, gets you pluses with Crusher, gets rid of problem cards, and is just generally a good 1-for-1 to have there. And if all else fails, he's a level 4 that you can overlay into Key Beetle. Then you've got 1 Thunderbird. Considering replacing the Lantern with a second Thunderbird, Thunderbird is really good. It's a floater that gets you past, or that combos with Crusher, but gets you past a bunch of trap cards, which is really good. I've got 1 Zephyros the Elite, which combos with all the frickin' continuous spell and trap cards that this deck has to offer. And he also is a dark for Crusher. You've got 1 Breaker, which combos really nicely with Crusher. You can get rid of back row. He's like the Lila for this deck, except, he's dark. So if your opponent has 2 back row, you can go Breaker, Crusher's effect, Breaker's effect, and then overlay into a rank 4. Or if your opponent has 1 back row and a monster, combos and combos and combos. Then you've got 1 Gale, once again, combos with Crusher. Special summonable with Zephyros the Elite on the board, halves monsters attack, and also is a tuner that can go into Black Rose. You've got 1 Dark Arm Dragon because he's your boss monster, and you have a certain degree of graveyard control in this deck. Then you've got the Double Maxi. This deck has issues with faster decks, like really heavy aggro decks, so Maxi slows them down, and if they don't slow down, it gives me a bunch of advantage, which gives me access to my tons of trap cards, and things like Crusher and Tour Guide and stuff like that. So that's really good. Then you've got 1 Allure of Darkness. Starting off your pretty short spell lineup, you've got a Book of Moon, Dark Hole, Messenger of Peace. I'm thinking of finding a way of doubling this card because it's been amazing every time I put it on the board. Because I can set a Crusher and go Messenger of Peace and set some back row, and the opponent's going to be distracted trying to take out the back row before they go for Messenger of Peace. So they can't take out the Crusher, and the next turn I can just flip the Crusher, summon a Spirit Reaper, and start attacking under monsters to get rid of the opponent's hand. Then I've got 1 Magic Planter. Once again, lots and lots of continuous trap cards in this deck. So it gives me some draws off of them once they die, and if I don't have Zephyros on the board, or in the grave, rather. Then you've got triple MST, and then your trap lineup is triple Fiendish Chain, double Mirror Force, double Call of the Haunted, which can bring back Crusher, it can bring back Thunderbird, just tons of things it can bring back. I am tempted to start running 1 Pinpoint Guard over the second Call of the Haunted, since Pinpoint Guard can keep the Crusher alive for the entire turn. But, there are other things that I can work with here. So I've got 1 Bottomless, 1 Torrential, 1 Compulse, 1 Trap Stun, Vanity's Emptiness, and a Safe Zone. Safe Zone takes care of the Crusher, and it also combos well with Master Key Beetle, and, what's his face? Blackwing Armor Master. So, why don't I get down to some of the duels So let's start off with the first duel that I had with this one, which was versus Cephalon Sworn. Not the best player I've ever played against, but, you know, things happen. And it gives you a good idea of kind of the way that this deck abuses Tour Guide to the degree it does. So I use Tour Guide to go into Alucard to take out his face-down Magical Merchant. I set 3 back row and pass turn. So his hand doesn't look that amazing. I have no idea why he's running Volcanic Counter. He normal summons the Lila, and I assume correctly that he's got the Honest in his hand. Apologies for the phone call. And so I go into Zen Main's attack over the Lumina, and he does drop the Honest, which I think is a little weird, seeing as I was attacking with the Zen Mains, and he was just going to get hells of minuses out of that. So during his end phase, I MST one of his Beckoning Lights, and he activates the other. So I go for a Spirit Reaper. He uses his Volcanic Counter. Once again, I have no idea why he has that there. And I attack with the Spirit Reaper to take the Raikou out of his hand. He sets a Magical Merchant, and then he kind of realizes that I have game at this point. After he adds his... Yep, there we go. Alright, next game versus X Sabers. This was actually a really fun game. So I open up pretty decently. This is a good example of how frickin' good Messenger of Peace is in this deck. So I set the Crusher, I activate Messenger of Peace. He runs into the Crusher with an Emmer's Blade, so I decide to make the Breaker play during my turn. I pay for Messenger of Peace. I use Crusher to destroy the Emmer's Blade, and Breaker to destroy his back row, which turns out to be an MST, which he uses on my Messenger of Peace, which I am A-okay with, because that just means that I get to attack directly with my Breaker. He draws into Dark Hole, clearing my field, and attacks with a full Helm Knight. But I have Tour Guide in my hand, so I can come back from that pretty easily. I do draw into the Night Assailant, which sucks, and that is kind of a drawback of Night Assailant. But in this deck, Night Assailant isn't a bad thing to draw into. It's just a really good card to have during the damage step if you're facing something like Evil Swarms or something that, has a lot of protection for itself that it can't activate during the damage step. So I go into Zen Mains. He summons the Rajagura to get his Emmer's Blade back. He uses Night Assailant to destroy my Zen Mains, and I think he's trying to get rid of all my Zen Mains' material this turn. But I Fiendish Chain the Gravity Warrior that he goes into, and I destroy it during the end phase with my Zen Mains. I then attack into his Rajagura. He sets his Emmer's Blade, and I take my turn. I assume pretty correctly that he has that Emmer's Blade face down, and it isn't going to get me very far to just ram into it with a Zen Main, so I decide to wait until I have better resources. I have the Spirit Reaper, which means that as soon as I can clear his board, I'm going to be putting in some serious work with it. I draw into Maxi, which is really good. The problem for him right now is he has 3 hand traps, and hand traps aren't very good against my deck. Especially Maxi. Maxi doesn't do him a whole lot of good, but I do activate that Call of the Haunted, which allows him to pitch the Maxi to get draw out of it. So I summon the Crusher from my graveyard, and then I use Spirit Reaper to combo with Crusher to destroy his face-down Emmer's Blade. He uses Rhoda to get Boggart, or to get Pashul, which he then special summons with Boggart Knight. I drop the Maxi, he goes into Hyunlei, I draw 3 cards, and then Fiendish Chain his Hyunlei, or I draw 2 cards, sorry. And then it's my turn. I go Allure, since I know that I can't summon my Dark Arm this game. I decide to Allure, and I get a Thunderbird, which I then use to destroy his monster, and attack directly with Spirit Reaper to take his last Maxi out of his hand. Then I go for Key Beetle with Thunderbird and Crusher, and safe zone my Key Beetle, and now I have the Key Beetle safe zone lock, which is incredibly powerful. He decides to Mirror Force, which takes out my Spirit Reaper, which is a decent play considering Effect Veiler is basically his last resource at this point besides Emmer's Blade. So I attack into his Dark Soul with the Key Beetle, and he adds the other Dark Soul to his hand during the end phase and draws into a Fall Troll. I bottomless the Fall Troll and then attack over the Dark Soul with Key Beetle. He adds another Fall Troll to his hand, sets a Book of Moon, and I draw for turn. I attack over the Emmer's Blade with Key Beetle, and then I end my turn and allow him to go. So I draw for turn, and I attack into the Full Helm Knight. I don't want to summon the Spirit Reaper because it's going to leave me open for damage, which I don't like. I thought that he was going to use the Full Helm Knight's effect. I think he might have misclicked or something because he didn't. He bottomlesses my Zephyros, but I can pulse it back to my hand because I really like Zephyros, especially with a Call of the Haunted sitting dead on the field and a Crusher in my graveyard. So he trap stuns. I chain chain Maxi in case he decides to go for a big play, but it turns out that he doesn't have anything to take me on, and he ends the duel right there. Let's see. Ooh, this was another duel um, where I abused Key Beetle. I think that this duel was the best abuse I have ever gotten out of Key Beetle, and you'll see how that works in a second. So I decide to open with Zenmain's for back row. Looks like I'm playing against vampires. He summons the Sorcerer. I bottomless the Sorcerer after he summons it with Zombie Master. I draw into Magic Planter, and I don't use it. He goes DDR, summons Lavalval Chain, and I Fiendish Chain the Chain. And I use Zenmains to pop the chain, but during the main phase 2, I use Magic Planter to draw 2 extra cards instead of losing my Fiendish Chain. I set the Crusher and activate the Vanity's Emptiness. He attacks into Crusher with his Mizuki. He goes for Vampire Shift when I summon Tomato trying to destroy it, so I just go into Key Beetle. And I Key Beetle the Vanity's Emptiness, and then attack directly with both Zenmains and Key Beetle. So now I have a Key Beetle with Emptiness and a Zenmains, which really, really hurts for zombies. And now I've got Key Beetle attached to a Safe Zone and a Vanity's Emptiness. So the duel is essentially over at that point. So then I will take you to my final duel, where I went against Dragon Rulers. So I open up, it's not a very good hand. It looks like he opened up with a pretty amazing hand, now that I'm looking at the replay for the first time. So I decide to set my Trap Stun and my MST with a Tomato, and then I set another MST, having MST'd his other back row. He goes Trade In to drop the Blue Eyes and draw 2 cards. He uses Blaster to go into, what's its futs? Stardust Spark Dragon. I decide to normal summon a Lantern and use Crusher to start to activate the Spark Dragon's effect. Once again, I apologize for the phone call in the background. I go for Arc Knight, which I use to take the Stardust, and then I attack right into a Gores. And then he just goes off during this turn. I can't do much except for MST his DDR because I have no outs for the things he's doing. In all reality, if he had left a couple of those cards on the board and gone for Big Eye, I probably wouldn't have been able to defend from it. But he decides to try and just run over the Arc Knight and leave a Dracosac on the board. But I am prepared with the Dark Armed, which ends up being totally disastrous for him. I set the Tomato and a Fiendish Chain, and I end my turn. So he goes for a Colossal Fighter, which I decide to Fiendish Chain, because I know what he's going to try to do with that Colossal Fighter. And then I draw into Gale. I set the second Crusher that I have in my hand, and I banish the other Crusher to take out his Colossal Fighter. He goes for Tempest, goes for Tree, and he ends the duel right there. So that's just a sneak peek at my Tomato Toolbox Crusher Control deck based on the Team Minority build. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comments section below. And then, of course, subscribe for more decks, discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. I am your host, the RJB0, and I gotta jet. See you guys.